Hi, everybody. This is Nicole Bradford here, and we are having a great chat today. I've been looking forward to this. If you've ever really wondered what the big corporates think about the future of human potential and the future of transformation and transformative tech as it relates to healthcare, consumer products, and human capital, then this is your moment. So I'm here with a dear friend of mine, Duleesha Kulasooriya, who is the head of strategy for the Center for the Edge, which is Deloitte's practice area for really looking ahead and seeing what's going on. And so this is a great chat for you today. There's a bunch of reports that and research that Deloitte has done in the links, and I think you're going to enjoy this. I've been looking forward to it. So, hi, Duleesha, how are you?
Hey, Nicole.
Could you tell everyone a little bit about the Center for the Edge?
Yeah, the Center for the Edge is it's a management research institute, and we try to look at what's around the corner. So if you ask my consulting colleagues what drives their behavior, they'll tell you it's whatever keeps their clients up at night. Our mandate is slightly different. Our mandate is what should be keeping your clients up at night, and how do we bring that to the table? So we tend to look at the deeper kind of shifts underway and not the next technology or fad. And so that's why, as you referred, we're kind of like the futurists for Deloitte. We're a small unit. We do three things. We do research, eminence, and advisory. So we do the deep research on the white spaces, that what's around the corner. We write perspectives on that. The eminence is kind of taking that out to the public, talking about it. And the advisory, with a small set of either ecosystems, companies, or startups, we would want to kind of get much more involved to help accelerate their growth.
That's great. And one of the things that we talked about and where we realized that we had this affinity for this area in the future that we were both tracking is you guys were working on a project that you called Roots and Shoots.
Yeah.
And we have that in the comments, everybody, that report. Could you tell the group a little bit about what that project was and what you learned?
Yeah, where it all started was most of our work is directed towards our clients, right? The large institutions that we serve as consultants in a professional services company. And we're talking about how the world's changing, what's fundamentally different, and what new practices these companies need to develop. And then we stopped and said, and this is myself and my colleague Maggie, and we said, well, what about all of us? You and I, all of us as individuals, what practices do we need to thrive in a world that's going to be constantly changing? And so we wrote this paper, I mean, pretty much for us as for anyone else, unlocking human potential. But the short form Roots and Shoots essentially gives a summary of the practices. So what we found when tracking the trends was there's this huge trend towards mindfulness, meditation, wisdom 2.0, essentially slowing down as a reaction to the increased stress. And we also saw all these trends on speeding up, everything from the tough mudders to the Spartan racers to hacking this, hacking that, going faster and faster. So slowing down and speeding up. And the Roots and Shoots are kind of like that. We need to have sets of practice that allow you to slow down and practices that allow you to speed up, and that these two are not contradictory, they're actually complementary. So a few things we wanted to highlight. One, you wanted to be proactive, not reactive. So don't make it be reactive to stress. Get ahead of the thing, build those practices. Complementary, not contradictory. These Roots and Shoots are like they're reinforcing. And it's really about the learning. You're doing this in order to unlearn and learn new practices, because that's what you're going to need to thrive as a human in the future. And one of the big focuses was like, how do you get started? Just start small. Just get on the path. And we featured TransTech as a whole call out, a full page call out, and that's the connection between Roots and Shoots and TransTech.
Yeah, some of the things that we've talked about in our various conversations, as you know, that for me, transformative tech, a big chunk of it is about the future of work
Yeah.
because the social emotional skilling that people are going to need to have in order to, one, be hireable to actually have jobs. And then the second part is to navigate all of the change. And so when you think about what future organizations look like and the way that there'll be teams of teams and fast teams, and
Yeah.
that one of the skills really is the ability to have the level of self-awareness that allows you to be a trust builder. And people are going to need to do that more quickly to be able to communicate, collaborate, be creative.
Yeah.
I wonder if you might speak a little bit about your human capital interest and what you guys are seeing and how you see it tied to transformative tech.
Yeah. So on the human capital side, we know that both the world of work and the work we will do is going to be fundamentally different from what we do today. And the practices that we have around that are from the past century. It's what made us and these companies successful in the past, but it's not aligned to the future. So two things that these technologies can do, like that are very fundamental, is one, feedback loops, right? They give you much more data and information as to how you're feeling, what you're doing, both as an individual and as a group. Second, it lowers a barrier to kind of understanding about yourself, about others, and therefore being much more responsive to your environment. So that helps both you as an individual and you as one part of a team. Now, just to be frank, like the report that we wrote, it's the 101. It's the most basic report for transformative tech. What you're doing and all of the companies that you're incubating are much, much deeper into the space. So I think the role that we play is giving an on-ramp for people to say, oh, what is this? What can I use it? We're helping people at least point in the right direction, but you guys are way deeper into this than we are.
Yeah, every day, all day.
Yeah.
It's funny, the other day, it turns out that if someone is interested in this space and they want to understand it both from a sort of like a strategic and then what's happening on the company, like the gritty company level, what people are doing, you pretty much end up getting pointed to us.
The corporate wellness. So there's one part. There's a corporate wellness part, and that itself is a 3.8 billion. That's a number I think one of the Deloitte reports noted. Business globally. But the learning and development, which is completely different, is even much bigger than that. So it's a massive space.
Yeah, it's the learning and development part too. And then what about what are your thoughts just not just on learning and development, but inspired leadership as it relates to transformative tech and people thinking about the future of work and the future of humanity?
Inspired leadership. Tell me more. What do you mean by inspired?
Well, there's a couple of parts. One is wellness at work. So that's like how the people who are in the companies are thinking and feeling. Then the second part is sort of learning and development, which is how they learn how to be, how to either address their wellness or how to be better team members or all of those things. And then there's another part that sort of, it's in action. You are doing it in the moment. And so I'm curious about how you think about technology and just sort of the future of humanity. It's a little bit, off of some of the questions that I sent you, but you and I always riff about these things.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Leaders of the future, like what do you think the leaders of the future need to know and have, and how does that relate to, technology and building great companies?
So work in the future is going to be a lot more asynchronous in some ways and intuitive in other ways. So if you are connecting with a team that might be very remote and you don't have the physical connection, having these signals, what you're seeing in AR and VR environments, what you're seeing with even very simple kind of emotion reads of your team, can help you navigate the little micro signals that you get if you're physically in a room working in a team together, right? So more and more work is going to be disaggregated, working in gigs, working in different ways, and it becomes harder and harder to. We had to replace the micro signals you got as a bunch of humans in one room in a different way, and this tech allows you to do that. So that's one way of where the transformative tech can come really become helpful, because now you can bring the best experts on anything to come together, but you can build trust, build a team, and work much more effectively in a way that you just couldn't do before.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one. That's a little bit further out, I think. Um, I don't know. I mean, you would know this better than I would in terms of how real this might get.
Yeah, I think it's getting super real. I've seen
Yeah.
some amazing team building things that are done in VR. One of the people who's going to be speaking at the conference is Phil Rosedale from High Fidelity, and they figured out how to get
Exactly. So that's a
microfacial
very good example, right?
expressions
Yes.
into the avatars so that people can actually have a stronger sense of
Yeah.
presence and that they're
Yep.
actually with another person. And I'm really excited about his work because I think it's key to restitching the social fabric, but also because flat social is,
Yeah.
breeds a lot of bad behavior. But also, what that's going to do for distance work and the number of people who are, working remotely, the ability to have a meeting with someone, and eventually, like right now, all this stuff is sitting on our head, on top of our
Yeah.
heads, and it's heavy.
Yeah.
At some point, it's going to just get lighter and lighter, and eventually, it'll be a thin pair of glasses, and eventually, maybe even just a contact. And so, with that, then you'll be able to have meetings with people all over the place, and to be able to feel like you're with the person, I think will do a great deal for work.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things, so one of the reasons why I was really excited about interviewing you for this is because I, I read all your stuff.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite sources for sharing information with the community and, all of the entrepreneurs that I mentor and that the people come to the conference. A great deal of my stuff comes from, Deloitte, from your various practices, or also from, the Center for the Edge. And so, I really appreciate your the healthcare reports you put out. I really enjoyed the Millennial Report. I got a lot out of that because it's like that rising generation is really going to set the tone
Yeah.
for what's happening, because you have to have a confluence of need, demand, and means. I'm wondering if you might mention a little bit about just some of the work that you guys have done and the learnings that you've had about the from the Millennial Report, and just what you know about, like, what are future workers like, and what's the rising generation wanting?
Yeah. So to be clear, the Millennial Report and some of the other ones are done with other parts of Deloitte, but I'm familiar with some of that work.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
what's been reflected by the millennials is actually not very different from the general population, but it's particularly highlighted in their case. One of the things is they want more personalization. They want more things customized to them, and that is exactly what TransTech does in some ways, to identify what your needs and behaviors are, and being able to communicate that, and therefore being able to address things that are much more personalized to you. And that's a trend we're seeing everywhere in consumer behavior, not just for millennials. And we're getting trained that way, right? Just when you expect free 2-day shipping, now we expect that from everyone. And so as consumers, we get it starts from the millennials, but it moves to everyone else as well. On the healthcare side, I mean, this the shift from sick care to health and wellness is a massive trend, right? That's a huge trend. And again, trans tech is going to be what really fuels that beyond what it is today, because it gives you a lot more information, and allows you to kind of get started in small ways to start changing your behaviors, and to shift your mindset from you only like take care of it when you're sick, but you take care of it when you're well. So healthcare, consumer, millennials. We already talked about kind of the corporate wellness. There's so many of these things when it comes to how we live and how we behave, that all these transformative technologies are going to come impact in a big way.
That's great. So my last question is one of the questions that I sent over. What's the one thing that you would want everyone to know about the trends that you're tracking and the trends that you see at the center?
So, and I may be wrong in this, but from my sense, a lot of the trans tech is still focused on a B2C, going at consumers directly, and it's very kind of high tech, high niche, and there's a massive opportunity for the B2B space, and it's going at the minimum viable product. Like what could you do that many people can access? We saw this in the gene sequencing early on, where like you got so much information, and all the geeks like myself got on it, and we got your genes and all that. And now it's transitioned much more into ancestry. Like we can connect you with who you are and where you came from, as a very simple use case, but it somehow touched many more people. Right? It's not that you and that allows you to still get the data to build it, all that stuff, but finding that product market fit, and tapping more into the consumers, the corporate space, looking at that, because there's a huge need that's unaddressed, and maybe going after some much simpler minimum viable products rather than kind of this really cool niche thing. And then there's also the opportunity, I think, which you're leading in, to have a shared identity around trans tech rather than the niche that you're in, rather than, hey, I do sleep tech or I do AI or VR, to broadly kind of raise the water level for everyone around transformative technologies that would allow for more of us to achieve our potential. So I think those are the things that I thought about when you sent that question. So like those are the things that are meaningful in terms of where this whole industry or this segment could go.
Yeah, I love that you said that about having a higher order goal that all of these things fit into. Because one of the things that we saw since you did the roots and shoots, and that period of the way that we were looking at trying to divide and categorize the products, is that since then, a lot of categories are blurring. Like because the sensors, so many sensors are migrating into this thing, it becomes easier and easier compared to how it was for apps to have sensors and not have an additional sensor.
Yep.
And then everyone's starting to do machine learning, and we're looking at ways to help people do that. But to have this sort of like higher order goal about what is this about?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's important. One of the things we were looking at, I was working with a small group. We're looking at, you know, maybe there needs to be an 18th SDG, because there isn't the human mind, human
Yeah.
cognition, the state of the human mind. It's covered a little bit in the health part of the UN. Oh, everyone, it's the UN Sustainable Development Goals is what we're talking about. So the state of the human mind is covered a little bit in the education part, like how you would learn, the equivalent of learning and development for everybody, not just corporates. It's included in that next to some really important things like the number of girls in schools and that kind of thing. It never explicitly says social emotional training, the kind of things that keep you from having that allow you to deal with stress, anxiety, depression, that allow you to have resilience.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing for that. And then on the mental health side, it's just it's in health, but it's also next to very important things like basic healthcare that people need. And so to have the state of the human mind inside those buckets makes it very difficult for people to organize around it, and to have goals and challenges around it. And why that's so important, because I'm often asked, like, how does this compare to clean water? Isn't that more important? Or to climate change, isn't that more important? And my response to that is that yes, that is important, but the three biggest challenges facing mankind, one is climate change, and the things driving it. So energy
Yeah.
generation, food production, and waste disposal. And then the second one is economic inequality and
Yep.
figuring out what's going to happen with that. And then the third one is the state of the human mind. And I don't believe you solve the first two without that one. So we need a way to sort of like get at it. And so your point about having a having the entrepreneurs in the space sort of resolve to a higher level goal, I
Yeah.
think is like right on point. It's just like you couldn't have said it better.
I think that's your role because everyone's got their niche to grow, but like giving them a shared identity around it would be huge to raise the water level around this. And let's get this into corporations more so that and the way to get into corporations might be through the wellness program or learning and development. But once you get the people as human beings gaining from it, they will help bring the corporations more in a much more meaningful way as well.
Yeah. And I love what you said earlier about moving from B2C to B2B
Yeah.
and to enterprise. And then right on the other side of that is, I think after that, that's serving more of the government systems
Yeah.
and B2D, because it's like, I'm interested in like where the people are. So like
Yeah.
one of the people speaking at the conference are the founding team from BioBeats. And they've just finished a huge program with the healthcare system in the UK. And so, they've got a very evidence-based scaled solution around heart rate variability.
Yeah.
And it's pretty awesome. They haven't announced everything yet, but their stuff is published. And so they're going to show, they've given me a sneak peek on like an, oh my God, learning that they've had that they're going to share with the community at the conference.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
yeah, so that's going to be really cool. So I so appreciate your time. I really, really do. Everybody, the some of the reports that we talked about are in the links. Sign up, for getting any sort of emails from Deloitte. Their research is fantastic. It's my go-to research, and then the Center for the Edge is one of my go-to thought partners in really thinking about the future of the human mind, human potential, human capital. And so everybody, Duleesha is an incredible resource for this.
Cool. Thank you, Nicole. Great chatting and very much engaged in helping you with this.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.